Danny Rivers pushed his wheelchair through the medical lab, trying not to think about the pain shooting through his spine. The bones in his legs had grown weaker over the years, and now even sitting hurt, but he had work to do. The virus samples from the colony worlds needed analysis, and nobody else seemed to care enough to do it properly. His supervisor walked in looking worried. "Danny, are you sure about this summit? You don't have to go. Someone needs to represent the medical team," Danny said, adjusting his glasses. "Those colony kids are dying from something we don't understand. If the Galactic Council can help, I need to be there." The woman sighed. "You're the smartest person I know. I just wish you didn't have to prove it to aliens who think humans are all supposed to be super soldiers." Danny smiled weakly. "Yeah, well, I missed that particular genetic lottery." 2 days later, he arrived at Crossroads Haven, a massive diplomatic station floating between star systems. The place buzzed with aliens of every shape and size. Some had 4 arms, others had scales or fur or skin that glowed. Danny felt very small and very human as he rolled through the corridors. The opening ceremony took place in a huge circular chamber with seats rising up like an ancient amphitheater. Danny sat in the human section, feeling eyes on him from every direction. He knew what they were thinking. Humans came from Earth, a death world where everything tried to kill you. Humans were supposed to be tough, strong, dangerous. Danny was none of those things. The speeches dragged on. Ambassadors talked about peace and cooperation while Danny reviewed his medical data on a tablet. Then the doors at the far end opened and the entire room went silent. A creature entered that made Danny's breath catch. It stood 12 feet tall on powerful legs covered in black scales that seemed to drink in the light. Wings folded against its back, and when it moved, muscles rippled like liquid stone. The head was angular and fierce, with eyes that burned orange like coals. "A Saurian," someone whispered nearby. "From the volcanic world Ashley." Danny had heard of them. Warriors and mercenaries feared across the galaxy. This one carried itself with absolute confidence, scanning the crowd as if measuring everyone for combat. The creature stopped in the center of the chamber. When it spoke, the voice rumbled like distant thunder. "I am flame that cuts the sky. I seek the bonding as is the tradition of my people." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Saurian bonding was legendary. A warrior would choose the strongest fighter they could find and swear to protect them. It was a sacred oath that could never be broken. "I have watched you all," Flame continued. "I have studied your warriors, your champions, your greatest fighters." The orange eyes swept across the room. "And I have made my choice." Everyone leaned forward. The human military captain straightened in his seat. A massive Krogath warrior flexed its 4 arms. Even some of the diplomats looked hopeful. Flame turned and walked directly toward the human section, toward Danny. "No," Danny thought, "not toward me, past me. He's going to the captain." But Flame stopped right in front of Danny's wheelchair. The massive head lowered until those burning eyes were level with Danny's face. "You," Flame said. "Danny Rivers, I choose you." The chamber erupted. Laughter from some species, shocked gasps from others. The human captain looked offended. Ambassador Lydia Cross, the senior human diplomat, stood up in confusion. "There must be a mistake," she said. "Danny is a medical researcher, not a soldier." "There is no mistake." Flame knelt bringing his enormous form down in a gesture of respect. I claim the right of bonding with this human. Will you accept my protection, Danny Rivers? Danny's mind raced. This had to be joke, some kind of insult. He was the weakest human here, maybe the weakest human in the whole diplomatic corps. Why would a legendary warrior choose him? I don't understand, Danny said quietly. Why me? Because I have watched you work for 3 weeks through security feeds, Flame replied. I have seen you spend every night analyzing data to save children from worlds that hate your kind. I have seen you refuse rest, refuse help, refuse to give up. Strength is not only in the body, Danny Rivers. This I have learned too late in my long life. Danny stared. The whole chamber waited. I can't fight, Danny said. I can barely walk. I'll just slow you down. Then I will carry you. Flame's voice was gentle now. Do you accept? Something in those orange eyes looked almost desperate. This wasn't a joke. This warrior genuinely wanted to protect him for reasons Danny couldn't fully grasp. Yes, Danny whispered, I accept. Flame placed one clawed hand over his heart and bowed his head. Then we are bonded. Where you go, I follow. What threatens you, I destroy. This I swear on the fires of my home world. The ceremony dissolved into chaos. After that, diplomats argued, species representatives demanded explanations, and security tried to restore order. Through it all, Flame stayed beside Danny's wheelchair, a silent mountain, scales and muscle. Ambassador Cross eventually pulled Danny aside into a private corridor. What were you thinking? Do you have any idea what you just agreed to? Saurian bonds last for life. I know, Danny said, but did you see his eyes? He wasn't mocking me, he meant it. That's what worries me, Cross muttered. A Saurian warrior bonding with our medical officer. The galaxy is going to think we've lost our minds. A deep rumble from behind made them both turn. Flame stood there filling the corridor. The human Danny Rivers is under my protection now, Flame said. He will come to no harm. That's good to know, Cross said carefully, because someone just blew up a maintenance deck on the lower levels. Security says it was an accident, but it was not an accident. Flame's eyes narrowed. Someone tests our defenses. They probe for weakness. Danny felt a chill run down his spine. You think someone's planning something? Flame looked at him with those ancient, knowing eyes. I think someone fears what you might discover, little healer. Your work threatens powerful interests. That is why I chose you. You needed protection, whether you knew it or not. Before Danny could respond, an alarm blared through the station. Flame moved instantly, positioning himself between Danny and the corridor. Ahead, wings spreading slightly in a defensive posture. And Danny realized his quiet life as a researcher had just ended forever. The sterile white walls of the medical lab reflected Flame's obsidian scales as he tried unsuccessfully to fit through the doorway. Danny watched the massive Saurian turn sideways, fold his wings tighter, and finally squeeze through with a scraping sound that made the other researchers wince. Maybe you could wait outside, Danny suggested, trying to sound diplomatic. No, Flame positioned himself in the corner, knocking over a tray of instruments. I remain with you. Dr. Hayes, Danny's colleague, whispered, how are you supposed to work with a dragon watching everything? I'll manage, Danny said, though he had no idea how. The virus data filled his screen with complex patterns, 3 colony worlds, had reported outbreaks in the past. Month children were dying, their immune systems attacking their own bodies. The medical establishment called it a random mutation, but something nagged at Danny's mind as he studied the genetic sequences. Hours passed, the other researchers left. For meals and breaks, Flame never moved. Never complained, just watched with those burning orange eyes. You don't have to stay every second, Danny said during a rare moment of quiet. I'm just looking at computer screens. Nobody's going to attack me here. Someone already tried on the lower decks, Flame replied. The explosion was meant to distract security while they investigated. 3 armed individuals attempted to access the medical wing. I stopped them. Danny's hands froze on the keyboard. What, when? 2 hours ago, you were concentrating on your work. I did not wish to disturb you. You can't just not tell me these things. Danny spun his wheelchair around. What if you'd been hurt? Flame made a sound that might have been a laugh. You worry for me, small healer. I have survived 2 centuries of war. Few station thugs pose no challenge. Still, Danny felt his face flush. We're supposed to be partners now, right? That bonding thing you did. You should tell me what's happening. Something shifted in Flame's expression. The fierce warrior mask softened slightly. You are correct. I apologize. Old habits remain strong. I am used to protecting, not partnering. They looked at each other across the lab. Danny noticed details he'd missed before. Scars on Flame's scales faded, but numerous. A slight hesitation in how the Saurian held his left wing. This wasn't just some warrior looking for glory. This was someone who'd been hurt before. Why did you really choose me? Danny asked quietly. Flame was silent for a long moment. Then he moved closer, his massive form somehow gentle as he lowered himself to Danny's eye level. I bonded once before, Flame said, with the greatest Saurian warrior of my generation. He was strong, fierce, unbeatable in combat, and he was arrogant. He believed strength meant he could do anything, take anything, hurt anyone weaker. When I finally understood what he truly was, I broke the bond. It is the greatest shame a Saurian can bear. Danny listened, hardly breathing. For 50 years I wandered, Flame continued, refusing to bond again. Then I saw you through the security feeds. You spent 16 hours straight analyzing medical data because 3 children on a mining colony were sick, children whose parents had called your people parasites and demanded you leave their system, and you worked to save them anyway. That's just being a doctor, Danny said. No, Flame's voice rumbled. That is being strong where it truly matters. Strength without compassion is merely violence. Compassion without dedication is merely sentiment. You have both. That is why I chose you. Danny didn't know what to say. Nobody had ever called him strong before, not his father, the decorated military officer, not his teachers who'd watched him struggle with physical activities, not the other researchers who could work standing up while he needed special equipment. The moment broke when Danny's screen beeped. New data had finished processing. He turned back to look, and his blood went cold. Oh no, he whispered. What is it? Danny pulled up 3 separate files, comparing them side by side. The virus. It's not random. Look at these genetic markers it targets. They're specific. Very specific. Flame moved behind him, studying the Screen. Explain. Every virus that's killed a child on these 3 colonies shares the same targeting mechanism. It goes after a particular genetic sequence that's common in humans but rare in other species. This isn't a natural outbreak. Someone engineered this. The implications hung in the air like poison. Someone was creating bioweapons designed to kill human children. You must present this to the council. Flame said. I need more proof. They'll say I'm being paranoid, seeing patterns that aren't there. Let me dig deeper if I can find the source. The lab door exploded inward. Flame reacted before Danny could even process what was happening. The Saurian's wing swept out, knocking Danny's wheelchair backward into the corner. Armored figures poured through the smoke, weapons raised. Secure the researcher, one of them barked. Kill the dragon. Flame roared and the sound shook the entire room. He launched himself at the attacker's, claws extended, moving with a speed that seemed impossible for something so large. The lead soldier fired, but Flame twisted in midair, the plasma bolt scorching past his shoulder. Danny watched in horror as the fight turned the lab into a war zone. Flame fought like a force of nature, but there were 6 attackers, all professional soldiers with military-grade weapons. They moved in coordinated patterns, trying to flank him. The data, one soldier yelled, pointing at Danny. Get the data. 2 soldiers broke from the main fight, rushing toward Danny. He fumbled with his wheelchair controls, but there was nowhere to go. The corner trapped him. Then Flame was there, interposing his massive body between Danny and the attackers. A plasma bolt meant for Danny's head struck Flame's shoulder. Instead, the Saurian didn't even flinch. His tail swept out, smashing one soldier into the wall. His claws caught the other, disarming him. Touch him, Flame growled, and you will learn why my people are feared. The remaining soldiers hesitated. That moment of doubt cost them. Flame moved through them like a storm, precise and unstoppable. Within seconds, all 6 lay unconscious or groaning on the floor. Station security burst in moments later. Weapons drawn, they stopped at the scene. Before them, a Saurian warrior standing over defeated soldiers, protecting a man in a wheelchair who clutched a data tablet like it was the most valuable thing in the galaxy. Because maybe it was. Ambassador Cross arrived within the hour. She listened to Danny's explanation, studied the data, and her face went pale. Someone's trying to start a genocide, she said quietly, and they know you're close to exposing them. Danny, you're in serious danger now. I know, Danny said. He looked at Flame, who still had burn marks on his scales from taking shots meant for Danny, but I'm not alone. Flame met his eyes for the first time. Since the bonding, Danny saw something in that fierce gaze that looked almost like friendship. No, Flame agreed, you are not alone. And neither am I. Outside, station alarms began to wail. Someone had just triggered a lockdown. Ambassador Cross received a message on her communicator, and her face went white. They've arrested me, she said in disbelief, on charges of conspiracy. The station commander is ordering your immediate detention, Danny, both of you. Flame's eyes blazed brighter. Then we run. Danny grabbed his data tablet. Together, and as security forces converged on the medical wing, a dragon and a man who could barely walk prepared to face an entire station. The maintenance tunnels smelled like oil. and recycled air. Danny's wheelchair bumped over uneven grating while Flame moved ahead, checking each junction. Before they crossed, behind them heavy boots echoed through the corridors. Security was getting closer. Left here, Danny whispered, checking the station schematic on his tablet. There's a service elevator that'll take us to the industrial sector. They'd been running for 3 hours. Danny's arms ached from pushing his wheelchair. His spine felt like someone had driven nails through it, but stopping meant capture, and capture meant the data he carried would disappear. Children would keep dying. Flame suddenly raised a clawed hand. Danny froze. Ahead, 2 security officers rounded the corner, weapons drawn. They saw Flame and immediately opened fire. The Saurian's wings snapped out, creating a shield of scales and membrane. Plasma bolts splashed harmlessly against it. Flame charged, closing the distance before the officers could adjust their aim. 2 swift strikes and both guards dropped unconscious. Are they alive? Danny asked as they passed. Yes, they follow orders, nothing more. I will not kill those who do not deserve death. They reached the service elevator, but Danny's heart sank. A keypad with alien symbols blocked access. I can't read Veridian script. Move aside. Flame's claw punched through the panel. Sparks flew. He ripped out a handful of wires, twisted 2 together, and the doors hissed open. Sometimes strength has simple solutions. The industrial sector was darker, filled with the hum of machinery and the hiss of steam vents. Fewer cameras here, fewer patrols. Danny directed them toward an abandoned storage area he'd found in the station schematics. Inside, surrounded by old cargo containers, they finally stopped. Danny slumped in his wheelchair, exhausted. Flame paced like a caged predator, his head constantly turning, listening for pursuit. We can't run forever, Danny said between gasps. We need help. Your people on the station, the workers, the civilians, can they be trusted? Danny thought about the human crew he'd met over the past weeks. Engineers who maintained life support, merchants who ran small shops, service workers who cleaned and cooked. None of them were soldiers or diplomats, just regular people trying to make a living. Maybe, he said, but what can they do against station security? Flame stopped packing. You think like a warrior thinks, in terms of direct conflict, but you showed me another way. Remember, you saved those colony children not with strength but with knowledge and persistence. Perhaps your people have their own strengths we have not considered. Danny pulled up a communication app on his tablet. It was risky, but they needed allies. He sent a coded message to Rachel Kim, an engineer he'd befriended in the cafeteria. She'd complained about the Veridian administration, about how they treated human workers like servants. The reply came in minutes. Maintenance. Shaft 47, 20 minutes. Come alone. It could be a trap, Flame said. Could be, Danny agreed, but we are out of options. Rachel was waiting when they arrived, along with 3 other humans. She stared at Flame with wide eyes, but didn't run. Is it true, she asked Danny, they're saying you attacked the medical council? That you're working with this Saurian to sabotage the summit? It's a lie, Danny said. He explained everything: the virus, the engineered bioweapon, the attack in the lab. He showed them the data. One of the other humans, an older man, named George, study the genetic information. My daughter lives on one of these colonies. Are you saying someone deliberately made her sick? I'm saying someone is making all our children sick, Danny replied, and they want to stop me from proving it. Rachel and the others exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication passed between them. We've noticed things, Rachel said. Slowly. Equipment going missing from restricted areas, unauthorized shipments coming and going. We thought it was just corruption, smuggling maybe, but if this is bigger, I need to get this data out, Danny said. Broadcast it to every ship in the system. Once it's public, they can't cover it up. The main communication array is in the command sector, George said. Most secure part of the station. You'd need access codes, security clearance, and you'd have to get past about 50 armed guards. Flame growled softly. Then we fight our way through. No, Danny said firmly. We are smarter than that. He looked at the humans gathered around him. You all work on this station. You know its systems, its quirks, its weak points. Help me think. How do we get into the communication center without fighting an army? What happened next surprised even Flame. The humans started talking fast and excited, building on each other's ideas. Rachel knew the maintenance schedules. George knew which security officers took smoke breaks and when. Another woman, Lisa, worked in environmental control and knew how to trigger false alarms in specific sections. They weren't warriors, they were ordinary people, but together they knew this station better than any security force. We create chaos, Rachel said, grinning. Multiple small emergencies all at once. Nothing dangerous, just enough to pull security in 10 different directions. While they're distracted, you two use the cargo transit system to reach the command sector, George added. It's not monitored as heavily. They use it to move supplies. Danny felt hope flickering. Can we really do this? We are humans, Lisa said with a shrug. We're not the strongest or the fastest, but we are stubborn and we are good at solving problems. Over the next hour they planned. Danny contributed his medical knowledge to make sure their diversions wouldn't actually hurt anyone. Flame offered tactical advice on security patterns. The human workers provided detailed knowledge of every system on the station. When they were ready, Rachel clasped Danny's shoulder. We're taking a huge risk here. If this goes wrong, we'll all end up in detention. I know, Danny said, and I'm grateful. Why are you doing this? Because you came to this summit to help our kids, she replied simply. Nobody asked you to. You're not even from the colonies, but you cared anyway. Least we can do is return the favor. The plan launched at Midnight Station. Time across Crossroads Haven small. Emergencies erupted, a coolant leak in Sector 7, artificial gravity. Fluctuations in the residential areas. Food synthesizer malfunction that filled an entire corridor with smoke. Nothing life-threatening, but all requiring immediate attention. Security forces scattered, rushing to contain each incident. In the chaos, Danny and Flame moved through the cargo transit system, network of automated conveyor tunnels, meant for boxes and supplies, not people. Flame had to crawl, his wings scraping against the ceiling. Danny abandoned his wheelchair, letting Flame carry him. They reached the command sector's cargo bay and emerged into an empty storage Room, the communication center, was 3 floors up. Danny pulled himself onto Flame's back, wrapping his arms around the Saurian's neck. "I've never flown before," he admitted. "Then trust me, little healer." Flame's wings spread, one powerful leap, and they shot upward through a vertical maintenance shaft. Danny's stomach lurched. Wind rushed past his face. For a moment he forgot his weak bones and failing body. For a moment he felt free. They crashed through an access panel and into the communication center. 5 guards stared in shock. Flame roared and 3 of them ran. The other 2 raised weapons, but Danny shouted, "Wait, just listen." Maybe it was the desperation in his voice. Maybe they were curious. The guards hesitated. "Children are dying," Danny said. Quickly, "Human children. Someone engineered a bioweapon. I have proof. Just let me broadcast it, please." One guard lowered his weapon slightly. "How do we know you're telling the truth?" "Because I'm willing to die to get this information out," Danny replied. "I risk everything for a lie." The guards looked at each other. Then slowly they stepped aside. 5 minutes, one said. "That's all we can give you." Danny uploaded the data to the broadcast system. His fingers flew across the controls, feeding in every ship frequency he could access. Transmission began, spreading across the system like light breaking through darkness. Halfway through, the door exploded open. Station Commander Strand stood there with a dozen elite soldiers. "Stop the transmission," Strand ordered, his voice cold. Danny kept typing. "Everyone already knows." "Not everything," Strand said. He pulled out a small device and pressed a button. "Phase 2 is already in motion." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Flame positioned himself between Danny and the soldiers. "What is Phase 2? Strand smiled. "You'll find out soon." "Enough, arrest them both." The soldiers advanced, and Danny realized with horror that exposing the bioweapon plot had only revealed the beginning of something much worse. The interrogation room was bare metal and cold light. Danny sat with his hands cuffed in front of him, his wheelchair taken away. Across the table, a Veridian intelligence officer named Kelly's studied him with cold eyes. "You have caused significant trouble." "Human," Kelly said. "Your broadcast has created a political incident. Several species are demanding investigations." "Good," Danny replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Then they'll find out about the bioweapons." "What they will find," Kelly said slowly, "is that a paranoid human researcher saw patterns in random data. Viruses mutate, children die. It is tragic but natural." "It's not natural. The genetic targeting is too specific." "So you say, but you have no proof of origin, no manufacturing records, no chain of custody for these supposed bioweapons, just data that could mean anything." Danny's heart sank. Kelly's was right. He'd proven the virus was engineered, but not who made it or where it came from. A good lawyer could tear his evidence apart. "Where's Flame?" Danny demanded. "The Saurian is contained," he fought. "Rather, when we separated you, it took 30 guards to subdue him." Kelly smiled slightly. "He kept calling for you, did you know that? Quite touching, really." Danny's hands clenched. "If you hurt him, you'll do what exactly?" Kelly's leaned forward. "You can barely stand without assistance. You are alone, powerless, and frankly insignificant. The kindest thing I can do is send you back to human Space quietly, forget this crusade. Except that sometimes bad things happen. No, I won't stop, Danny said. I won't. Forget, and I'm not alone. Kelly's laughed. Your dragon is in a reinforced cell. Your ambassador is under arrest. Your worker friends have been detained for questioning. Who exactly will help you? Before Danny could answer, the lights flickered, then went out completely. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. An alarm started wailing. Kelly's jumped up, grabbing his communicator. What's happening? The response crackled with static and panic. Multiple containment breaches. The Saurian has escaped. He's tearing through security teams. Sir, we can't stop him. He's heading for the detention level. Danny felt a fierce surge of hope. Kelly's pulled out a weapon, pointing it at Danny. Call him off. Tell him to surrender or I'll. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Flame stood in the opening, his scales scorched and dented, but his eyes blazing with fury. 20 guards lay unconscious in the corridor behind him. Step away from him, Flame said, his voice dangerously quiet. Kelly's pressed the weapon against Danny's head. I will kill him. Then you will die. 1 second later, Flame replied, and it will be slow. I will make certain of that. The Verendi officer's hand trembled. Danny could see the calculation in his eyes, weighing his chances. Finally, Kaylee's lowered the weapon and stepped back. Flame crossed the room in 2 strides, scooping Danny up as gently as if he were made of glass. Are you hurt? I'm okay, Danny said. How did you escape? I told them I would tear the station apart piece by piece until they released you. They did not believe me. Flame's expression was grim. They believe me now. They moved through corridors filled with smoke and flashing lights. Flame had indeed torn the station apart. Doors hung from broken hinges, wall panels sparked with exposed wiring. Security teams gave them a wide berth, unwilling to engage a Saurian who'd already defeated 40 of their colleagues. Rachel and the other human workers met them in the cargo bay. She thrust Danny's wheelchair at him and a data tablet at Flame. You need to see this, she said urgently. We've been monitoring communications. The Verendi are evacuating their personnel from the human residential sectors, all of them right now. Danny felt ice in his veins. Why would they evacuate unless they know something's about to happen there? George finished. Something bad. Danny grabbed the tablet and started searching through station systems, his fingers flying. He pulled up energy readings, atmospheric monitors, structural integrity sensors. There anomalies in the human sectors, small devices attached to power conduits, ventilation systems, structural supports. Bombs, he whispered. They've planted bombs throughout the human areas. Flame growled deep in his chest. Phase 2. They're going to blow up the human sections during the closing ceremony tomorrow, Danny said, his mind racing through the horrible logic. Maximum casualties, then they'll blame it on human extremists, justify intervention in our space, take control of our colonies. Can we disarm them? Lisa asked. Danny studied the readings. There are dozens of devices. They're networked together to detonate simultaneously. If we try to disarm them individually, we'll never get them all in time. Then we find the control hub. Flame said, cut off the head, the body dies. The hub will be heavily guarded, George warned. They'll expect us to try this. Danny looked at Flame, understanding. Passing between them without words, then. We split up. Flame creates a distraction, draws the guards away. I take a small team to find the hub. No, Flame said immediately. I will not leave you unprotected. You won't be leaving me, you'll be protecting everyone else. Danny met those burning orange eyes. This is bigger than just me now. Those bombs will kill hundreds of humans, children, families. You have to trust me to do my part. Flame's claws clenched and unclenched. Every instinct in his warrior body screamed against this plan. The bond demanded he stay by Danny's side. Protect him personally. Please, Danny said softly. I need you to do this. I need you to be what I can't be, the warrior who saves them with strength while I save them with knowledge. For a long moment, Flame didn't move. Then slowly, he lowered his head and touched his forehead to Danny's. If you die, Flame said, I will burn this station to ashes. Then I'd better not die, Danny replied. Go, I'll find the hub. You make sure every guard on the station is too busy to stop me. Flame turned to the others. Protect him, even if it costs your lives. Rachel nodded. He's our people. Got him. Flame left, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. Moments later, alarms started blaring from the far side of the station. Explosions, roars, screams, the sound of a Saurian warrior unleashed. He's really something, George said quietly. Yeah, Danny agreed, he really is. Now, come on, we have work to do. They moved through the emptying corridors, following Danny's readings toward the source of the network signal. Rachel led them through service passages she knew from her years on the station. Lisa disabled sensors as they passed. George kept watch behind them. The hub was hidden in the environmental control center, just as Danny had suspected. Only 2 guards stood watch. They looked nervous, young probably, left behind while more experienced soldiers dealt with the Saurian rampage. Danny rolled up to them, his hands raised. Please just listen. There are bombs in the human residential sectors. Hundreds of people will die, including children. I need to access that control panel to stop it. The guards exchanged uncertain looks. We have orders. I know, Danny interrupted. You're following orders, but orders don't make something right. You know what the Verendi government is doing. You've probably known for a while. Maybe you told yourself it wasn't your problem. Maybe you were scared to speak up. I understand that, but right now in this moment you have a choice. Let us through and be the people who saved lives, or stop us and be the people who let children die. One guard lowered his weapon. I have family. So do the people who will die if we don't stop this, Danny said gently. So do I, in a way. A stubborn dragon who's probably destroying half the station right now because he's worried about me. Please help us be better than our governments. The guard stepped aside. Danny rolled to the control panel. The system was complex, but he understood the logic. Network detonators with a single trigger. He had to disable the network without triggering the fail safes. His hands moved across the controls. Rachel helped, following his instruction. George and Lisa watched the door. 15 minutes 10:05. Danny's broken arm throbbed. His spine screamed in protest, but he kept working, kept thinking, kept solving the puzzle. With 2 minutes remaining on the countdown he hadn't known was running, Danny found the master override. He hesitated for just a moment, making sure he understood the sequence correctly. Then he pressed the final command. The network shut down. All across the station, bombs went inert. Danny slumped in his wheelchair, exhausted beyond measure. They'd done it. The people were safe. Then the door burst open. Commander Strong stood there with a weapon pointed directly at Danny's head. Clever human, Strong said coldly, but you've forgotten something. Phase 2 isn't just about the bombs, it's about making sure people like you never interfere with us again. He pulled the trigger, and Flame, scorched and bloodied but still standing, crashed through the wall and took the shot meant for Danny's heart. Flame collapsed. The plasma bolt had struck him in the chest, burning through scales that had withstood dozens of attacks. Smoke rose from the wound. His breathing came in ragged gasps. No, Danny threw himself from his wheelchair, crawling to Flame's side, his hands pressed against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. No, you can't. You promised you'd be okay. Flame's eyes flickered, struggling to focus. Protected you, my oath fulfilled. Shut up, Danny sobbed. You're not dying. I won't let you. Strong stood over them, weapon still raised. How touching, the weak human crying over his monster. Don't worry, you'll join him soon. Rachel moved fast. She grabbed a piece of debris and hurled it at Strong's head. The commander ducked, and in that moment George tackled him. The weapon skittered across the floor. Lisa was already pulling out a communicator. Medical emergency. Environmental Control Center. We need a trauma team now. Danny ignored all of it. His entire focus was on Flame. The Saurians' breathing was getting weaker. The wound was too deep, too severe. Danny's medical training screamed that this was fatal. But he didn't care about training right now. He cared about his friend. Listen to me, Danny said fiercely. You don't get to die protecting me. That's not how this works. We are partners. Remember, we protect each other, so you're going to stay alive, understand? That's in order. Flame made a sound that might have been a laugh. Blood flecked his mouth. You give orders now, little healer. Yes, and you're going to follow them. Medical teams burst into the room along with security forces, but these weren't Verendi guards. They wore the neutral markings of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Cross was with them, freed from detention. Stand down, all of you, Cross commanded. By order of the Council Emergency Committee, Commander Strong is under arrest for conspiracy to commit mass murder. The guards moved to secure Strong while the medical team surrounded Flame. Danny refused to move away, his hands still pressed against the wound. Sir, we need to work, one of the medics said gently. Then work around me, Danny replied. I'm not leaving him. The head medic looked at Danny's hands, saw how they were placed with perfect precision to slow the bleeding, and nodded. You're trained good. Keep that pressure while we stabilize him for transport. They worked together. Danny called out. Saurian physiology details he'd researched during quiet nights, getting the medical team through the differences between Flame's biology and more common species. His voice stayed steady even as his heart threatened to break. Flame was loaded onto a hover stretcher. Danny climbed on beside him, ignoring the protests about weight limits. His Wheelchair could wait, this couldn't. In the medical bay, surgery lasted 7 hours. Danny waited outside, packing in a borrowed wheelchair. Rachel and the others had tried to make him rest, but he'd refused. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flame falling. Ambassador Cross sat with him. You saved thousands of lives today, Danny. The council has the full evidence now. The Verendi government is collapsing. You stopped a genocide. I almost got Flame killed, Danny said numbly. He chose to protect you. That was his decision. He shouldn't have had to make it. Cross was quiet for a moment. The universe isn't fair, Danny. We both know that. You've lived with an unfair body your whole life, but you never let it stop you from doing what was right. Neither did Flame. Maybe that's why you work so well together. The surgery light finally turned off. Doctor emerged looking exhausted. He'll live, the doctor said, and Danny felt his entire body go weak with relief. Severe tissue damage, but we've repaired the major vessels and sealed the wound. He's incredibly strong. Most beings wouldn't have survived that shot. Can I see him? He's sedated, but yes, briefly. Flame lay on a medical bed designed for large species, tubes and monitors attached to his massive form. His breathing was steady now, deep and even. Danny rolled close and took one of Flame's clawed hands in both of his own. You stupid, wonderful dragon, he whispered. Don't ever scare me like that again. 3 days passed. Danny slept in a chair beside Flame's bed, worked on his tablet and refused to leave. The human workers brought him food. Ambassador Cross brought updates. The Verendi collective's government had indeed fallen. Reformers were taking control. The bioweapon program was exposed and shut down. Cures were being distributed to the infected colonies. They'd won, but victory felt hollow when Danny looked at Flame's still form. On the 4th morning, Flame's eyes opened. Little healer, he rasped, you stayed. Danny's vision blurred with tears. Of course I stayed, you idiot. Where else would I be? Flame tried to sit up and winced. Danny pushed him back down with surprising force. You stay in that bed until the doctors clear you, Danny ordered. That's not a request. Giving orders again, Flame observed. I have created a tyrant. You created a friend, Danny corrected. Friends don't let friends die from stupidly heroic acts. It was not stupid, it was necessary. Flame's voice softened. When I saw him aim at you, there was no thought, no choice, only the bond, only the need to protect what matters. You matter too, Danny said fiercely. To me, you understand that, right? This partnership, this bond, it goes both ways. I need you alive. Flame studied him with those ancient eyes. You saved me. When I fell, you could have run, could have escaped with your data and your victory, but you stayed. Of course I stayed. Why? Danny met his gaze. Because you're not just my bodyguard, Flame. You're my friend, and friends don't leave each other behind. Something in Flame's expression shifted. The last walls between them, the final distance of duty and obligation, crumbled away. What remained was simple and true. I bonded with you because I saw strength. I admired, Flame said quietly, but I would die for you because I found a friend I love. Danny squeezed his hand. Then don't die. Live for me instead. It's harder, but more worthwhile. Recovery took weeks. Flame healed slowly, frustrated by his weakness. Danny understood that feeling better. than anyone, they helped each other. Through physical therapy, through pain, through the slow process of getting strong again. The galaxy had changed around them. The near catastrophe at Crossroads Haven had forced species to reevaluate their relationships. The Verendi plot had exposed the dangers of supremacist thinking, and at the center of it all was the story of a weak human and a fierce dragon who'd saved thousands. Through partnership, Ambassador Cross visited Danny with an offer. The council wants to create a new position, Chief Medical Officer for interspecies relations. You'd lead efforts to prevent future bioweapon development and respond to medical crises across the galaxy. You'd have resources, authority, and the chance to help people on a scale you've never imagined. Danny looked at Flame, who was attempting to walk without assistance and grumbling about it. "Can Flame come with me?" Danny asked. Cross smiled. "The position specifically requests that your bonded partner remain at your side. The council has learned the value of different kinds of strength working together." Danny accepted. 6 months after the crisis, they stood on a new medical station designed for exactly this purpose: research labs, treatment facilities, and diplomatic meeting rooms all in one place. Humans worked alongside Saurians, Verendi reformers, and dozens of other species. Flame had changed. He still moved like a warrior, but he'd learned to speak gently when children were afraid. He'd studied medical basics so he could better assist Danny. He'd become not just a protector, but a partner in healing. Danny had changed too. His body was still weak, still fragile, but he carried himself differently now, with confidence, with purpose. They were reviewing reports when an alert came through: a new virus outbreak on a frontier colony, fast-moving, deadly, targeting multiple species. Danny looked at the data. Already formulating responses, Flame began preparing their ship for departure. "Ready?" Danny asked. Flame nodded. "Always together." They left the station side by side, heading toward another crisis, another chance to save lives, the weak human and the fierce dragon showing the galaxy that strength came in many forms, and that the bonds between unlikely friends could change everything. The frontier colony of New Hope lived up to its name only half the time. The settlement sprawled across a rocky plain, prefab buildings clustered around a central dome. Dust storms were common. Resources were scarce, but the people, they were trying to build something. And now a virus threatened to take it all away. Danny wheeled himself through the medical tent, examining patients. Flame walked beside him, ducking under support poles. 3 weeks since they'd arrived, and the outbreak had only worsened. 50 sick now, 10 dead. No pattern Danny could find. "This doesn't make sense," Danny muttered, reviewing his notes. "The virus jumps species barriers, but not consistently. It affects some humans, some Verendi, even a few Kroggeth, but others in the same families stay healthy. Perhaps it is random," Flame suggested. "Nothing in biology is truly random." Danny pulled up genetic data on his tablet. "There has to be a connection. Environmental factor, genetic marker. Something." A young girl in one of the beds started coughing. Danny was there immediately, checking her vitals, adjusting her medication. Flame gently moved a parent aside to give Danny room to work. "Will she live?" the mother asked her, voice breaking. I'm doing everything I can, Danny promised. Later in their temporary quarters, Danny stared at Data until his eyes burned. Flame brought him food that he barely touched. You must rest, Flame said. You have not slept in 30 hours. People are dying, and you will join them if you collapse. From exhaustion, Flame's tone was firm. Eat, sleep, then return to work with a clear mind. Danny wanted to argue, but he knew Flame was right. He ate mechanically, then fell into his bed. Sleep came fast, filled with dreams of genetic sequences, dancing like constellations. He woke to Flame shaking him gently. Danny, I believe I have found something. What? Danny sat up, immediately alert. I was watching the sick ones through the night, ensuring they were cared for. I noticed a pattern in who becomes ill. Flame pulled up images on Danny's tablet. See, those affected all have a common trait. Danny studied the images. Humans, Verendi, Krogath, all different species. What could they possibly share? Then he saw it. Tattoos, he whispered. They all have tattoos. Decorative markings, Flame confirmed. I inquired. They received them from the same artist, a merchant who arrived 3 months ago. Danny's mind raced to tattoo ink. If someone contaminated the ink with the virus, it would bypass normal transmission routes, direct introduction into the bloodstream. That's why it seemed random. It wasn't spreading person to person. Everyone got infected at the source. Is this another bioweapon attack? Flame's voice grew dangerous. Maybe, or maybe. Danny pulled up shipping records. The ink came from a manufacturing facility with poor quality control. Could be accidental contamination, but either way we can stop it. They worked through the night. Danny synthesized a treatment targeting the specific viral strain. Flame helped distribute it to patients, his massive hands surprisingly gentle with needles and IV bags. The girl who'd been coughing started breathing easier within hours. Others improved. By morning, everyone was stabilizing. The colony administrator, a gruff Krogath named Rask, found Danny in the medical tent. You saved us. How can we repay you? Make sure that tattoo artist destroys the contaminated ink, Danny said, and get your medical supplies inspected regularly. Quality control saves lives. Rask's 4 eyes blinked in gratitude. When you first arrived, I wondered what a human in a wheelchair and a saurian warrior could do against disease. I was foolish. Not foolish, Danny replied, just seeing what you expected to see. A lot of people make that mistake. Their ship left New Hope the next day. Danny watched the colony shrink below them, feeling the familiar satisfaction of a crisis resolved. Another success, Flame observed. Council will be pleased. We got lucky, Danny said. If you hadn't noticed the tattoo pattern, I might have spent weeks looking for a non-existent genetic factor. You would have found it eventually. You always do. Danny smiled. We found it together. That's how this works. A message came through from Ambassador Cross. Another situation developing. This time a dispute between mining corporations that threatened to turn violent. They needed mediators. Not a medical emergency, Flame noted. No, Danny agreed, but we've learned our skills apply to more than just diseases. Conflicts need diagnosis and treatment. 2. They set course for the mining colony. On the way, Danny reviewed files while Flame performed maintenance on his armor damaged during a recent incident. where he'd had to physically hold apart two fighting drunks. Your father sent another message, Flame. Mentioned casually. Danny's hand stilled on his tablet. His father, General Marcus Rivers, had been sending weekly messages since the Crossroads Haven incident. They'd talked more in the past 6 months than in the previous 10 years. What did he say? He is proud of you, he requests permission to visit when we return to Council space. Do you think I should let him? Danny asked. Flame considered. He was not kind to you. When you were young, he made you feel lesser for your physical limitations. Yeah, but people can change. I changed. You changed me. Flame's eyes met Danny's. Perhaps he deserves the chance to show he has grown. Danny thought about the desperate young man he'd been before meeting Flame. Ashamed of his weakness, trying to prove himself, angry at a body that wouldn't cooperate. He'd changed so much, maybe his father had too. I'll think about it, Danny said. The mining colony situation turned out to be complex. 2 corporations claimed rights to the same asteroid field. Both had valid historical claims. Both employed hundreds of workers who'd lose jobs if their company backed down. Violence seemed inevitable. Danny spent 3 days interviewing workers, reviewing contracts, studying mining law. He barely understood. Flame attended negotiations, his mere presence reminding everyone that fighting would cost more than compromising. The solution, when Danny found it, was simple: split the asteroid field differently than either side proposed. Share the richest deposits, create a joint venture for the disputed areas. Neither corporation loved it, but both could accept it, and the workers kept their jobs. You have become a diplomat, Flame observed as they left. I'm a doctor, Danny corrected. I diagnose problems and prescribe treatments. Turns out that applies to more than just sick bodies. They returned to Council space to find their reputation had grown. The weak human and the fierce dragon solving problems others couldn't. Other species were forming similar partnerships now. Warriors and scholars, fighters and healers, strength and wisdom working together. General Rivers met them at the station. He looked older than Danny remembered. Gray in his hair, lines around his eyes. He stood straight and military proper, but his hand shook slightly when he saw Danny. Sir, the general said formally, then his military bearing cracked. Son, I'm sorry. For all those years, I tried to make you what I thought you should be instead of seeing what you were. Danny had imagined this conversation 1,000 times, angry speeches, cold dismissals, but sitting in his wheelchair with Flame standing quietly beside him, he felt only tired sadness for all the wasted years. I'm not a soldier, Danny said. I never will be. No, his father agreed. You're something better. You're someone who saves lives instead of taking them. I was wrong. Danny, so wrong. Can you forgive me? Danny looked at Flame, who gave the smallest nod of encouragement. I can try, Danny said, if you can accept who I actually am. I do, I promise. They talked for hours, not fixing everything but starting, building something new from the ruins of what had been. Later, Flame and Danny stood in the observation deck, watching stars drift past. You gave him a chance, Flame said. That took courage. You taught me courage, Danny replied. You saw worth in me when I didn't see it in myself. The least I could do was try to see it in him. We have changed many things little. Healer, the galaxy is different because of us. Danny laughed softly. We have changed each other. Most of all, you're not just a warrior anymore, and I'm not just a weak human. No, Flame agreed. We are partners, friends, and that is stronger than either of us alone could ever be. New assignments waited, more crises to solve, more lives to save, but for now, they watched the stars and enjoyed the peace they'd earned. Danny Rivers, the weakest human in the diplomatic corps, had shown the galaxy what real strength looked like, not in muscles or weapons, but in compassion, intelligence, and the courage to care. And Flame that cuts the sky, the fiercest Saurian warrior, had learned that protecting someone wasn't about standing between them and danger. It was about standing beside them, combining strengths, becoming more together than either could be apart. The bond that had started as duty had become friendship, the friendship had become family, and together they'd change the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be strong. In the end, that was the most human thing of all, taking broken pieces and making something beautiful, taking weakness and finding the strength hidden within, taking a wounded dragon and a fragile human and creating heroes. The story would be told for generations. The dragon and the bodyguard, the warrior and the healer, the bond that proved strength came in many forms, and the strongest bonds were those built on mutual respect, trust, and love. Danny and Flame shared a look, no words needed. They understood each other completely, and they were ready for whatever came next. Together,